This video is for theme modeling and simulation, unit manipulation, and this is video 6. In this video tutorial I'm going to continue to show you how to use some of the tools in Pixlr.com to carry on creating your spot the difference. In the previous video tutorial I showed you how to rotate part of an image, and you can see here in the center of the castle this is the changed image and this is the original image. So I've rotated that part of the image. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue looking through my picture to identify parts of the picture I can change in my spot the difference. I think the next thing that I want to do is another subtle change. Can you see this clock here? What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can change the time on that clock. So I'm just going to change where the hand is pointing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in using my zoom tool. I'm going to zoom into the clock. I'm just going to scroll across, continue to zoom in, scroll down a little bit. I need to get right into this clock because what I need to do is change the actual hand, this hand here on the clock. So I'm going to keep zooming in. Okay, I think that's probably about enough. So what I'm going to do here is a very similar method to what I showed you earlier in the previous video. I'm going to use a rotate tool. So I'm going to cut part of this image out and then rotate it. So to do that, make sure that I'm on my changed layer because this is where I'm making the changes. I'm going to again use this tool, which is the Marquee Tool. I'm going to go back to the properties, and this time I don't want to use this elliptical marquee, I want to use the rectangular marquee. I choose that. I'm going to draw around part of the image that I want to take away, which is there. Okay, so then I'm going to use the same method as before. I'm going to go to edit and cut it out of the picture. Now it doesn't look as if it's cut, but it has. The reason it doesn't look as if it's cut is because I can still see the original image behind it. So if I untick this box, you can see that I have actually cut this part of the changed layer. Now what I'm going to go and do is go to edit and paste. So you can see that it's pasted that part that I cut out into its own separate layer here. I'm going to use this move tool. I can now move this image back to where it was, which is roughly back there. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move the image into smaller movements. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to again use the edit free transform tool, and I'm going to rotate this part of the image so that it stays central here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to make it look as if it's just gone 3 o'clock. So I'm going to use this extra bit of line here to help me. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to press enter. And then what I need to do is I again need to merge these layers so that this part that I've cut out is back onto the changed layer. To do that, I right click on this layer and merge down. So it's merging this layer to this one. Like that. Now then, unlike the other image that we were playing with earlier, I actually still have some blank spaces here, look, and I need to correct that. So what I'm going to do, and this is going to take a bit of trial and error, I'm first of all going to choose a similar colour to this one that you can just see here. To do that, I'm going to use the colour picker tool, this one. If I click on the colour picker tool, it changes my arrow into this colour picker. And now what I need to do is click on a colour, so for example here, and notice what happens down here when I click on the colour. It changes my selected colour to this colour. So now I've got that colour, I'm going to use the brush tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush in this area, so I'm going to colour in this area. Now look at the size of my brush, that is way too big. Okay, so if I click there, look, that is way too big. So I'm just going to undo that in the history palette. What I need to do is I need to go to the properties of the brush here at the top, and I just need to click on this arrow because the brush is at size 50. I'm going to click on this little arrow, and I'm going to change the size of the brush to maybe 5. Okay, so I'm going to move my arrow back onto my screen, and that's probably about the size that I want. Okay, so once I'm happy with that, I can just click off that screen. You can see that I've accidentally drawn there, so I'm going to use my history palette to get rid of it. And now what I can start doing is, because I've got this colour, I've got a small brush, could start filling in these areas here so that there isn't any transparency, so that you can't see through it. There we go. Now what I'm not happy with is I've used the same colour down here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my colour picker and I'm going to choose this lighter colour, because you can see it's dark up here at the top but it's light down here at the bottom. So if I get this lighter colour, you can see it's changed the colour here in my colour palette again. Get my brush tool, I'm just going to go over this, the lighter colour, like that, and I'm happy with that. Next thing again, colour picker tool, I'm going to get the black for the hand on the clock. Now I'm going to go back to my brush tool, but I think the brush is maybe a little bit too big here, because it needs to go narrower as it gets towards the numbers. So I'm just going to go back up here to the properties, click on the arrow. Now I don't actually want 1 because that's too small, and I don't want 5 because that's too big. So down here at the bottom where it says diameter, I can actually type in my own number. So I'm going to type in 3 and press enter. And then again, I'm going to click off of this screen, so I'm going to click here this time so that it doesn't draw on my screen, like that. And then what I could do with this brush is I can just draw very carefully my line. Now I'm not happy with that at all, I'm really not happy with it, so I'm going to use my history palette here and I'm going to go back there, because that's how many times I pressed on the brush tool to draw the hand. And I'm not happy with this colour, so colour picker, I'm going to choose this black colour here. There we go, so it's a much darker colour. Brush, it's set to brush size 3, and then I'm going to draw it. Now this is a little bit better, but I'm not happy with that. History button. Now that might look okay, because you remember I'm zoomed into this, I'm zoomed in at 460% down here, look. So what I need to do is I need to get hold of my zoom tool and I need to zoom out. Remember, to zoom out, if I've got a plus symbol on my magnifying glass, that will zoom in. To zoom out, I need to keep hold of the shift button on my keyboard and click, and that will zoom out. So I'm going to keep zooming out until I get all of the image in there. And you can see that although it looked a little bit strange when I was zoomed in, that actually looks quite good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my tick back on the original image, and then I'm going to untick this one and look at the differences. So I should have a difference here and a difference here. Ready? There we go. Now I wonder if people will spot that. I think that's quite a good difference, because it's not too obvious and it's not too subtle. So I'm happy with both of those changes. I'm going to continue in this video to show you how to use another tool, which is one of my favorite tools. It's called the stamp tool. Now the stamp tool can do something really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my tick back on my changed layer, untick the original like this. And what I want to do next, this might seem quite strange and quite funny, but what I'm going to do is, you see this man's head here? Yep. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this man's head on this man's shoulders. Okay, now that could seem quite tricky, and I'm guessing that your original thought might be, well, what I'll do is I'll use the Marquee Tool and I'll use the elliptical Marquee Tool, and I'm going to cut his head out and put it there. But if I did that, this person would not have his head as well. So what I'm actually going to do is use this great tool that Pixlr has called the Clone Stamp Tool. So to do this, click on the Clone Stamp Tool, and what I need to do is move my Clone Stamp Tool brush onto the screen, and what I need to make sure is that the brush is the same size as this man's head, which it obviously isn't at the minute. So I'm going to go up to the properties and I'm going to choose maybe 150. Let's have a look. That's just a tiny bit, well, it's actually quite a bit, yeah, that's too big. I'm not happy with that actually. So I'm going to use this diameter button here. I'm going to maybe try 130. And that to me looks perfect. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So 130, click off of it. Now I'm going to show you what this tool does. It is a very clever tool. What I can do is I can move this tool over any part of the image. So before I show you how to move this person's head onto this person's shoulders, let's just have a look at this flag up here. I can move this tool over any part of the image, like that. Once I've got it over the part of the image that I want to copy, so remember I'm going to copy this man's head and put it on this man's shoulders. So imagine that I'm going to copy this flag and I'm going to put it here in the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this cursor over to the flag. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to keep hold of the control button on my keyboard. That is the button that says CTRL. I'm going to keep hold of that button and look how my cursor changes. Look how my cursor changes. There we go. So when I press the control button, you can see that my cursor is changing. Now what I need to do is I need to keep hold of my control button so that my cursor looks like that. I then need to click once on my mouse, like that. And then I let go of the mouse and I let go of the control button. Now what that's done is it's set a target. It's set a target saying this flag here, or that point of my screen there, is a target. So if I now move my cursor over here, there, the next time I click on my cursor, it will copy whatever I clicked on as the target. So watch, if I click there, you can see how the target appears on the right hand side on the flag, and when I draw, it is drawing what is over the target. Okay, so you can see that I can duplicate all this part of the screen here, like that. Now that's a pretty cool tool, don't you think? Now I'm just going to undo that, like that, and I'm going to use the exact same method to copy this man's head onto this man's shoulders. So I'm on my change layer, I've got the stamp tool selected, I'm going to move my cursor over to this man's head. I'm going to get it just right, which is there. I'm going to keep hold of the control button on my keyboard so that my cursor changes to a target. I'm going to click on my mouse. I'm going to let go of my mouse, let go of the control button, move my cursor over to this man's head. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to click. And notice that it puts this man's head, because it's copying from the target, it's put this man's head on that man's shoulders, like that. And that's my next change. I'm happy with that. So let's have a look. If I tick back on the original so that I can see behind it, I'm going to untick this one. And you can see here that I've put this man's head on this man's shoulders. So I now have 3 changes in my image. I have this here in the center of the castle. I have the clock where the time has changed. And I have this man's head has now changed to this man's head. And I've used a variety of tools to do that. In the next video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use even more of these tools to make further changes.